Everything's coming through clear.
I can hear you. I can see you. You look fabulous.
Friend.
Nearly 14 feet underground and in the dark is where we live. Using the term banger in 2021 has somehow eloped to a melodic, chilled out vibe. That was definitely not the idea in the mid 90s. When rave music was associated with a higher BPM to house music, there was an outlier in Toronto who took that label and stepped on the proverbial gas pedal. This DJ with us tonight is that highlight. The legend of the style of the music he mixed, Rotterdam, swept through Toronto. The dance floors were captivated by the ferocious drums and hyper rhythms that extended to the mixtapes that wouldn't be shared unless a form of collateral was left behind. I think this intro scratches the surface of the story of this fast cutting super mixer. Please welcome to the utility room the DJ known as Dominik.
Have me, Joe.
Yeah,
It's been way too long since I've seen you or talked to you. I am so stoked to do this.
I'm stoked to have you. Everything I said is true. I think to myself when I first started going out, long before I ever had the idea of like putting any records together, there was so much magic that was associated just from your name hitting a bill. And then when it actually was realized, when it happened at the party, people were just, I mean, let's get into this. Do you recall your
Yeah.
rise in popularity? Do you recall that happening in Toronto?
Um, yeah, my story is like it's definitely not a general pathway that a lot of people have taken. I came up from the industrial scene. Growing up, listened to like tons of hip hop, funk, disco, hard rock, and there was in 1987, I bought my first pair of turntables. Bought them off a guy from work. I was working at a meat department in a grocery store. Shocker, Italian grocery store. And this guy was selling his turntables. So I bought a pair of 12s for $500. Um, and at that point, I was working two jobs, wasn't in school, I just graduated high school. And I would go down to, Sam the Record Man, the Record Peddler, Star Sound, Play D, do the entire Young Street Strip, hit up like all 6 or 7 record stores along the strip, and just every night, 4 or 5 hours, teaching myself how to beat match. Heard anyone? Uh, I mean, I'd say the one catalyst for me getting into the music that I got into was probably Chris Shepard. I used to listen to Shep on CFNY. Back when I was into like Skinny Puppy, Nitzareb. I mean, I'm still into them, but he used to DJ on CFNY um, from 8 until 1 in the morning, and so 8 p.m. to 1 p.m. So 5 hours, and he would just play the most awesome shit, like so good. And when I heard stuff, I'd go looking for it, and it kind of elevated my thirst for new music and new sounds from the get go. It triggered something in me. So I'd spend like 400 or 500 bucks a week on records, and again, never been to a party. The only like I'd been to clubs, but as far as the type of music that I was finding myself attracted to, like the harder sound stuff, I never heard anyone playing it. There was no one to look at and say, "Oh, dude, that track that guy's playing," because like no one was playing it. Like I'd go in to play the record every week, and Peter and Tyrone, as soon as they saw me walk in, they would grab a shitload of the newest techno stuff that came out, put them on the turntables, 45 plus 8 everything and just play me shit for like an hour and a half, like
Did it
stacks.
work? Did it work?
Oh yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Like I still remember the first time I heard Poing was in Play to Record. Like I'd walk in there like, dude, you got to hear this, and I heard it, and it was like Rotterdam Records, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to buy. So I still buy the industrial stuff, remixes, and all that, but this was my new passion. This music just kind of spoke to me because it kind of brought in all the elements of my life that I had musically that influenced me. It had that industrial kind of like hard edge to it. It had the synths. It had even though a lot of people, especially with the untrained ear, anyone walking in and hearing hardcore for the first time would probably not say this, but it definitely had a certain musicality to it that that totally spoke to me. Um, so buying all these records, and at that point, I was DJ Ian, another super awesome guy and great DJ. He was doing industrial nights. I'd go to all his nights. Like he'd do Limelight on Wednesday or Thursday. Um, so during the week, I'd go to these different nights, and I was living in Rexdale, so it was quite the trek. But I mean, it just I wanted to hear the music, and I wanted to hear it loud. Like I wasn't content with just hearing it in the headphones or cranking up the volume a, for like 2 or 3 minutes before my dad started yelling at me to turn that shit off. So um and so so I mean at that point, like I was listening to industrial, but my my passion had changed. I was listening to music that had a lot more dance element to it, and I was dressing. Um, my clothing even became a lot more colorful. I was wearing like striped colored stuff and different colors where everyone around me is wearing black. And I remember it was one night at Limelight, and Ian played "Creep" by Radiohead, and just like the lyrics of the song at that point in my life, hearing it, the "I don't belong here" kind of resonated with me, and I looked around and I realized as much as I loved the scene, um, it it wasn't it wasn't mine anymore. I didn't, although I felt like I was a part of it. I was more kind of like an outsider looking in, um, but like looking into a house with the window, looking in, seeing a mirror, seeing myself in the reflection, but knowing that even though I could see myself inside, I was still on the outside. So at that point, I mean, I met up with Jeff Milligan, Algorithm, probably one of the most technical DJs I've ever like played with. He was mixing on 4 turntables when a lot of us were having trouble on 2. Some of us even on 1. Um, and because we frequented the same club nights, we started talking, we started hanging out, and he said, and I said, "Oh yeah, well I buy records." And yeah, he's like, oh, "Okay, so what kind of stuff do you play?" And I kind of described it to him because I really didn't really have a name for it. I couldn't really describe it other than like it's fast and aggressive. He's like, "Okay, well, tell you what, come to my house, bring a bunch of your records, and play for us." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I went home like the following week. I brought like a crate of records over. There was like maybe 8 or 9 people, back in the day when when ravers lived on their own. It was like 4 or 5 dudes in a house, where you like split the food and whatnot. And I played for like 4 hours, and he's like, nobody plays this type of music. I'm like, oh, he's like, okay. He's like, you're pretty good. I'm like, oh, thanks. So from that point, um, we, we kept hanging out, and then he came to me and told me that they were thinking of doing a weekly Friday night thing um, called Destiny Fridays, and he's like, you should definitely be playing at it. And back in those days, you based the night around the musical styles. So, if you're playing like chill, like 120 beats per minute, like some like acid house, you'd be playing like 10 or 11, and then like the harder trance, like 12, whatever. So I was playing like at prime time every Friday night for like I was playing like between 1 and 2 o'clock every night, every Friday. At that point, I was working in a hair salon. I just graduated hair school, and I'd been working there for like maybe 6 months. And I said, because I couldn't work Saturdays because I was working like late Friday night. So I quit. I quit my job, and I said, this is what I want to do. Um, and we the night, you know, back then, because they were renting out the party center every week, it costs money. So, Ryan couldn't pay us right away. Like I think we did it for maybe like 4 or 5 months before we saw anything, before I got paid. Um, so like, I mean, I had at one point $2. I had it last me 2 weeks. Um, but I was determined, and
I feel like
I
that's a utility room episode on its own. I don't know about that magic trick, but
yeah. Um, but I was determined because I really wanted to um, I really wanted to play. It wasn't because I wanted to like get girls or because I wanted to make money. It was just something that I wanted to do for myself. Um, so yeah, I just kind of stuck with it, and then I went to my first rave in August of 1993. I went to Raverama at the Pickering flea market. Went by myself. Met up with Jeff and all his friends. The second party I went to was the CN Tower rave. And then the third party I went to, I was DJing at in London, Ontario. And then from like I played my first party on the Friday or the Saturday, Devil's Night, 1993, and then the following week, Destiny Friday. So I was basically for the next 15 years, from the time, like from the first record that I played in front of a crowd. It's like when I look back on it, I wouldn't change it for anything. Like even like the struggling, but like it was so much fun. Like I was actually doing something that was bringing me inspiration, and um, was making people dance. It's pretty dope.
you felt the
Yeah.
heat from the, do you think it was, so hold on for a second. While
Yeah.
these shows were happening in a back-to-back fashion weekly for you, were you also making mixtapes simultaneously, or the mixtapes come after?
The mixtapes came after. The first mixtape I ever made was um, Jeff Algorithm on side A, and I was on side B. Ecstatic made like 50 of them, and that
Do
was it.
you
Just
do you
one.
do you still have that?
I don't. I think Jeff might. Um, I'm not sure, but I do know we made 50 tapes.
Like,
Um,
what the fuck does that sound like? Like,
yeah, I
put me
don't
in a
know.
room for
I'm
90
scared.
minutes. I'll press play.
I'm
I'll
almost
press.
scared, but but
Woo!
uh, um, yeah, I guess like my big break into um, sounds really weird, but the mainstream rave
No,
community, like,
I mean, okay, sure, yeah. Listen, there was a highlighter on your name. That's what I mean. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to is you felt it. You must have felt it.
well, I mean, the thing is it was different for me than for a lot of other people for because I was the only one playing the type of music that I played in the entire scene in like at parties for like at least a year and a half. Um, I could basically, I wouldn't say like I had carte blanche to play whatever I want, but I could basically play whatever I want. Like if I like, I love hip hop. You know, if I wanted to throw down like an instrumental hip hop track during a breakdown, there was no one that would say like there was no nobody could say, "Oh, what are you doing? You're not playing hardcore." It was just like, "Oh, well, Dominic's that's what he does." You know what I mean? So it wasn't like drum and bass DJs. They have that like competition with each other. You know, oh, I got this tune. Oh, I got the VIP. You know what I mean? I got the dub plate, and there was always this pushing each other forward kind of deal. The same thing with house, same thing with breaks, same thing with trance, um, and and then there was me. Like I would either play in the jungle in the drum and bass room, or I would play in you know the house room or
Because
the
promoters didn't know where to put you, or because you were so versatile? A mixture of both?
because they could basically put me wherever they quote unquote needed me. Like if they you, you know what I mean? Like if it was if they needed someone to like you know inject like some puking into the party they could throw me on like I played the Pleasure Force party. I played right before D-Light. Like it just they I was versatile, but I was also in a rare position because I was the only one um that was doing it, and I was kind of good at it. Like for me it wasn't like okay.
No doubt.
But like, okay, so remember the turntables I bought for $500?
Sure. Well, I don't
Within,
remember them, but the story, sure.
well, the story, yeah, that I started with. Um, Within the first year DJing in the rave scene, I sold those turntables. I did not own another pair of turntables for 15 years.
Sold them out of necessity.
Sold them out of necessities for
Right.
rent,
Okay, sure.
and then ended up going to Value Village or the you Goodwill. Found a Sesame Street turntable, 45, 33. I'd go to the record store, listen to the records before I'd go to a party. I'd sit in front of that turntable. One of my buddies actually soldered an RCA cable to it so I could plug it into an amp. And I would just sit there and just like skip through records, put it in the crate, skip through records, skip through. And I would just put them in my crate with the side that I liked facing, so that as soon as I'm going through, if I pull out a record, I know that whatever track I like is going to be on that side. So for me, basically playing at parties was a chance for me to hear my records out loud.
That's fabulous.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
it's unconventional, but it worked. Like just everything aligned, and yeah.
Let's get into the shopping for a second. I'm curious because you said earlier when we first started talking that you would go, for example, you'd see Pete and Ty, and they'd line up all these records, then boom, 45 speed plus 8, and then this is Rotterdam. But did you find yourself having to compromise with other genres to match the speed that you were looking for? Or were you finding records that originated from Rotterdam and that was the style? I mean, okay, so how about this? I'm like mixing it. Firstly, have you been to Rotterdam?
No, I haven't.
Okay, but this is the genre. The name originates because in Rotterdam, that's the is that or it was the Darling. This
Well,
was.
I'm not even sure where that name came from because at the end of the day, it was hardcore techno.
What? Real
Yeah,
okay. Oh,
yeah.
so because this
I
is not hardcore music, right? If someone was saying, "Oh, it's hardcore," that's not hardcore.
the music
It's
that I was playing was definitely hardcore.
so what?
It,
So
it
what
was
is the difference
hardcore
between?
techno.
Okay, so you were playing hardcore techno. You weren't playing Rotterdam, and hardcore techno is not hardcore, or hardcore techno
Well,
is hardcore.
the thing is that you at the same time as the Dutch were making all this 4/4 stuff at like 100 and, 50, 160 beats per minute, you had the British guys making hardcore break beats like Asen, making hardcore break beats at 150, 160. So there was Dutch hardcore and then there was UK hardcore. UK hardcore was all breakbeat. Um, I mean, it definitely brought in elements of the Dutch hardcore as far as the 4/4, but the main component of UK hardcore was breakbeat.
Okay, so you're shopping in the stores, and you're looking predominantly for hardcore techno.
I'm just looking for stuff that I like.
You
Th-
you
this-
you never you never had you weren't following specific labels or certain artists. It didn't matter if it fit into
I,
your realm. It was going to work.
yeah, I mean, I didn't. I got obviously there were labels that um, put out a lot of stuff that I enjoyed, but I wouldn't not listen to something because I didn't recognize the label. And for me, because of where we are in Toronto, we're not. I wasn't pigeonholed into one style of hardcore over the other. I could play UK hardcore breakbeats and mix them with Dutch hardcore, and it worked because as long as the tempo is the same and the vibe of the tunes are in the same like vein or like energy level, it'll work. Like, dropping like a 70 beat per minute or 85 beat per minute hard, abrasive hip hop instrumental works because it's just matching the energies of the music that you feel, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Do you think that because of this, the pitch control became the magic component for performing?
I'm sorry.
Do you think that the pitch control was the magic component for performing? Like
Um,
because this would totally transform the song, right? Ultimately, on how it was being played.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean there were there were certain songs in order to make them fit. There were songs that you'd have to like speed up to +4 and have the other one down at -2. There were songs that like I knew would go so well together that I would sit there and spin the record to get it to go faster to beat match it because I'm like, this is gonna work and I'm gonna make it work. So like you sit there and like spin it with one finger and cut with the other. Because in my mind, like these two songs to the pitch control, I'd have some songs that I'd have -8 on one and +8 on the other and still spinning it up. It didn't happen a lot, but it did happen.
The making of mixtapes, was this a stressful process for you? Like were you
Oh,
always they came
this
they came to
mixtape,
get they came
my
together easily.
mixtape. Well, the way I made mixtapes, I never planned them out. I never went back. If I made a mistake, I made a mistake. For me, all my mixtapes were recorded live.
Were you
I, s- I
aware?
j-
Were you aware of how people were treating you? Like, did you ever end up in a house party situation where people were like, "Oh fuck, that's Dominic," and like your mixtape would be on?
the one time that it actually did kind of um, throw me kind of for a loop, but the circumstances around it kind of made it even more weird. Was the very first 3 day on the Friday night tornado hit, 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, we pulled Chameleon Aaron or Johnny. We pulled Johnny out of the tent just as it collapsed. Lightning everywhere, pitch black, ravers in trees, fire starting. Um, everyone making sure everyone's okay. And then like 5 o'clock in the morning, as the sun's coming up, there is no sound system anymore because everything has been completely destroyed. There's nothing, and in like people start putting on their mixtapes in their cars. So like, I'm walking and I could hear my mixtape, like 50 feet away. I was like, because the Pure Rotterdam Volume One had just come out, probably a couple of months before that. Um, and yeah, it was kind of trippy, but like I I I feel like a lot of the times I I didn't think anything there was anything special. Like I'd play like I enjoyed the fact that I'm a naturally shy person. I love the fact that I could that people come up to me and we could talk and introduce. I've met so many people that I wouldn't have if I hadn't been in the position that I'm in. Um, but like I never used it. I never thought of myself as the person that some people made me out to be. Like I never like I'm just like a regular dude. Like, someone I met someone and they were like, dude, like, you're like doing this, like you're just so amazing. I'm like, I'm the same as like I'm exact.
Legendary. The mixtapes were like these coveted items. It was like they became almost treasured pieces. It would be like, yeah, you can't borrow that. Be like, yeah, bring me over a blank cassette and I'll high speed dub it for you. You can hang out. Like, bring a six pack and a couple spliffs. We'll figure it out on the couch. It'd be like, I'm not lending it to you. It'd be like, I'm not. I'm just not. Stop asking. Like that would be the conversation. What was the most number of bookings that you had in one night?
Um I want to say three, but it may have been four on one Saturday night.
When you're smashing that many shows almost back to back and you're playing this type of aggressive music,
Yeah.
did what was happening? What's the aftermath? What happened when Dominic finally unplugged the headphones from the mixer?
Um so this is going to sound weird. So whenever I'd start playing, um I would kind of go into like a zone. And this isn't some hippie shit. Like I'm just saying like I would just immerse myself completely into what I was doing. I wouldn't remember any of my set when I was done. I would only remember the first track because that's the one that 5 minutes before I'm skimming through trying to figure out which one I'm going to start with. So I'd remember my first track and I'd remember my last track. Everything else in between was a blur and I was exhausted. That's all I knew is like after like the hour and a half, however long it was, I was exhausted. It like drained almost.
Did you find yourself once it started happening, once you were playing out, and you're going out all the time now, right? I mean, you're not just DJing, you're in the scene.
Yeah.
Now that because you were at one place where you were in one scene, you felt like there was a lateral move into this scene.
Mhm.
Were you feeling more welcomed with what you were doing? Did I brought up the idea that you were the outlier, and that's because you're right, there wasn't a lot of Rotterdam hard techno style DJs that were in Toronto that were playing out. When Dominic started DJing this form of music, which you pretty much could not capture anywhere else, this was the audio Polaroid moment for the dance floor.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about this, and while all was going on, did you ever feel the pressure to produce your own music?
Um, no, I mean, I dabbled in it. I've made like, you know, 9 or 10 tracks, but I just make them for myself. Like I, for me, it was all about DJing. Like, um, I first of all, back in the '90s, I did not have the math skills to deal with Cubase. Um, the softwares were a lot. more. Um, they were less user friendly as they are now. Um, but for me, it was just playing. It was just DJing. Like that was my love. Like I didn't I produced a couple of tracks. I had like, three or four like dub plates that I like played out or whatever. But I mean, it wasn't like it's kind of like the reverse. Like there were a lot of producers back in the day, especially starting from like 95, like the mid 90s on, where um producers, people who were strictly producers, all of a sudden became went out and DJ'd. And I'm curious as to whether like they enjoyed DJing and playing records as much as they enjoy performing live. Um, because for me, even playing my own music, even though I was DJing and I was playing my own music, it didn't give me, and I'm not sure if it's that self consciousness of, um, I hope they like it kind of thing that goes through your head when, you know, when, you know, even as a kid, you give your parents a picture, like, look what I made, there's always that worry kind of in the back of your head subconsciously that, are they going to like it? You know what I mean?
This was
Um,
this was
and I
this was part of your process before you
and I
performed.
I couldn't handle that stress. I wasn't like I didn't want that stress. I didn't want to have that. Like if when um, I DJ'd for myself. It wasn't like I never, you know, went into a party, and surveyed the room to see what was working, what wasn't. For me, like I barely looked up. I was playing for myself, and not because I don't want to come across as selfish, because I was definitely performing and playing for every single person in that room. Um, but all the tracks that I played were the ones that I wanted to hear. People were there for the experience, and I'm hoping for the music itself as well. Not just for me standing in front of them with like some fun for, I'm hoping that they actually enjoyed the music. Um, but I find that making music is a lot more. It takes it to a new personal level that at that point I didn't want to share with anyone. Like I wasn't ready or emotionally prepared to give that part of myself to anyone or to everyone, because I already give myself completely to everyone when I'm playing. And so if I ever made music, it was, I never recorded it. It would just be for myself, just keep that little nugget of myself, just private, just something that I can enjoy or friends. I didn't want to share that part of myself. And yeah, there's always that part of you that um, is wondering whether or not someone will accept your work as an artist.
Is this transferable? Do you believe that what it was you were just describing, is this relatable, transferable to today, to a DJ today? Do you think that is still a thing?
I'm not sure, because I mean, so much has changed. Like
Sure.
um, the if when we were DJing, like if you look at like the early 1990s to like the peak, like 2001, or yeah, 2001, 2004, like that peak where it was just every party had like 10,000 people, and like the big ones, and it was like a spectacle, and it was just like the amount of production that went into parties. If we had back then what we have now as far as social media and like camera phone, like phones on our camera and being able to videotape everything, first of all, we'd have a shitload more like videos of us DJing. Um, and second, like who knows where it would have gone from there? You know what I mean? Like the one thing that made the rave scene so amazing back in the early to mid '90s was that it was all like we were part of a global community of ravers because I'm a raver first, DJ secondary, everything else secondary. Um, what made it such a cohesive and awesome community is that everything was it was all DIY. You know, like we we made our own clothing, like we had our own music, like our own sound crews. We had our own security. We had like we went and got the spaces. You know, we sold water. We did, you know, like we did everything ourselves for ourselves. And I'm honestly I'm not sure. Um, I I have no idea. Like I think about it sometimes because I see like you're doing great stuff. Like Mark, like Grimace is doing awesome stuff. Like there's so many of the guys that I ran with that are still doing it. Like Marty, like I love that for you guys. It's just something that isn't me anymore. Like if there was a party that, you know, like getting together with like a bunch of people, that's one thing, but like I wouldn't even know where to begin to like for bookings or anything like that. Like I honestly have no idea what new DJs go through. Like I have no clue.
Did you always feel in a situation of where you were presenting yourself? It sounds like a mixture of introvert and extrovert, and both things are happening at the same time.
Hmm.
I
It's weird, right?
I mean, I don't know if I'd use that word. I'd certainly say it's alternative to. I think to myself, so I'm gonna I can only speak about me, right? You know, I'll find either a new song that I absolutely I'm going crazy for, or I've put something together that I'm like, holy shit. In either instance, both things, I'm like, I want to show somebody,
Right.
and as I guess show somebody it really is. I would like someone to hear this too, to see if they're having the same vibe that I'm having, and then the awesome symbiotic energized moment is when that happens out loud. I'm
Right.
somewhere. I'm able to press play on something out loud. This something that obviously that I adore, or I've made an adore in both instances out loud. This happens, and then the reaction is what I dreamed or what I
Right.
imagined it to be. And so, I think that like that is one major ingredient that I would think about for performing. I think that at least that for me is I yeah, that's fuel. That's fuel. So I I get mad nervous too.
Yeah.
I'm mad nervous right now. I don't know. Half the time I feel like I'm saying stupid shit, or I'm asking, I
No,
might be asking the wrong
you
question.
are a great host. You're a great host. But see,
Cheers.
the thing is that you know, like the one thing I love about record shopping back in the day, going to Play D on a Thursday, new record day. First of all, I'd walk right up and no, I wouldn't have to fight anyone for any of the hardcore records, which was awesome. But even, even like just going record shopping and you take that needle and you drop it into a track and you can tell right off the bat just listening to it for a split second, you can picture what that will do to a crowd, like, and you can envision the lights, you can envision the crowd, you know, and you know you'll get to the breakdown and you're just listening to it, and you got your eyes closed in the record store, and you're listening to it, and it's getting there, and it's building, and then it drops, and it just annihilates you, and like that's a tune, like like there's no filler music needed. Like we're DJs, we'd play like for an hour at a time. Like we weren't going and like playing from 9 in the evening until last call. You're in there for an hour. You're in and you're out, and you're just gonna like bang, 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 bang. You know what I mean? Like it's just
These are my best records.
these are the records that mean the most to me. And when people in the crowd can see how much something means to you, that's what they vibe off of. That's what they vibe off of. They don't like the music is not even like a catalyst. The music is what connects the two of you, the crowd and the DJ, but it's the energy from you to them. We, like I've never looked up when I play.
So
I
that
remember
that
DJing a
that's just
party.
it. For what you're describing, because you're I don't recall you being remotely statuesque. I do
Oh,
recall
I jump
I
around like dancer.
there
Yeah,
was a
the
bounce
bounce.
you had a bounce happening, but
Yeah,
and so you're describing the transference of energy. Okay,
right.
that
Transferring it to them, they're receiving it. It's building. They send it back to you, and it's just this back and forth. And then it just that's when a part. That's where the party, like the vibe of the party, just explodes because it's just like this back and forth to the point where no one can handle it anymore. And then you drop that you drop that tune that's got that what was that song? Josh Wink. State of consciousness, higher state of consciousness.
yeah.
The back and forth between a DJ and a crowd while that song is playing, especially if they're cutting it up, and then you get to that like that breakdown where it starts to build up, and the crowd's going nuts, and the DJ's screwing with the EQ and just building and building, and then when that song drops, the energy just explodes. That's the music is what binds you, but it's your energy combined with their response and their energy back to you
So
because you feed off of them just as much as they feed off of you.
what was your energy, Dom? That's what I because before you were saying introvert, but then you're up there and then that kind of didn't happen. So you
I was
were
still, I was still, I was still quite the introvert. I mean, I would, what I would do is I would find a point in the crowd, a person, um, like if it was a buddy of mine, and focus on them. And that was it. Like I DJ'd a party in Rochester. I knew nobody. I had my toque on. I pulled my toque over my eyes,
hat was
and
always real though.
all I could see were the turntables. And I just like did my shit, but just because you're not looking directly at someone doesn't mean they don't feel your energy.
Yeah, wild,
Yeah.
incredible share.
That's why
Thanks,
the
Dom.
that's
Yeah,
why
thank you.
when Yeah, because like that, I mean, back in the early days, that was the most important part of the party, the vibe. I mean, that's why everyone you wanted, you wanted it was a great part if everyone was on the same ease, if everyone was in this cohesive state where everyone was feeling the exact same thing, like there were no limits to like those parties are legendary, and it doesn't matter if there's 50 people at it or if there's 10,000 people at it. If the energy in the room is strong and is solid, that party will always be remembered because of the vibe, because that's all we talked about. Like, oh, yeah, the music was good but the vibe was shit. You know what I mean? It's like, well, it doesn't really sound like a good party because the vibe is like you can tell when there's a good vibe in the crowd. Like people are walking, like I'd walk through a crowd and like do bouncing around, waving to people, saying hi. Everyone's like giving each other hugs, and like everyone's just in a great mood because everyone's vibe is just so elevated from each other, you know. And I think music is important, definitely, but it's what is created. Like the crowd is just as important as the DJ. Like I used to tell people, they like, "Oh, dude, you're up there." I'm like, "Dude, I'm a raver just like you. We're just facing different directions, but we're the same." You know what I mean? Like without, sure, if I'm not up here playing, you don't hear music and you don't dance. But if you're not here, I mean, mind you, I didn't care if there were two people in the room or 1,000 people in the room. I'd still give it everything. But I mean, like they're just as important, and I think that's one of the aspects of the rave culture that we don't talk about, as much. Like we talk about, the promoters, we talk about the DJs, but it's the crowd. The crowd is what made the party because they're the ones that provide the energy. They are the most important part of the party. They provide the energy. You could play the best set in your life and play banger after banger, and if the vibe in the crowd is sketchy, like you might as well be like, shoes in the dryer, just mixing like you might as well just have the worst set because you're not going to get that transference of energy back, which then not only doesn't give you energy, it deflates your energy, and then it just has a negative back and forth.
Could you put us into this moment, Dom? Could you put us into this moment, this time when you were either DJing or that you went to a party that this was absolutely happening? Do you recall? Can you pull out one instance?
Okay. um I used to DJ at the basement. I was DJing at the basement at one point. I believe I was DJing at the basement 5 nights a week. So you remember the basement in
Yeah, I remember the basement.
the entrance room with the pool tables,
I mean,
and then you walk to the main room. That
okay.
just the entrance there. There's the bar there, and then you go into the main room. So one night,
There was pool tables in the basement.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, there were.
sure.
Um, yeah, before this was like before they renovated it. This was back.
They renovated the basement.
Shit. All right, we'll go through the venues another time. Um, but anyways, so they had the entrance room, I guess. It wasn't the main room. It was on the way to the main room. It had, like, the bar was there. They had a couple pool tables. There was a bathroom there. And I used to play as a basement. I never played hardcore. I played I played like house, techno, breaks, trance, and but I mixed them like I was playing hardcore. So
What, like house music records at +8?
no, no, no. But like the cutting, like
Oh,
oh yeah, yeah, like throwing in breaks. Oh yeah, yeah. It was not in the speed of hardcore, but in the style of the
right.
hardcore
Okay,
that
yeah, I'm dope.
and I started playing. An hour goes by, and I'm just like, whatever, doing my thing, just like you know, dropping tunes, blah blah. And then within like 2 to 3 hours, the front room that I was playing in was rammed. Rammed. There was no one in the main room. Everyone was in the front room where I was playing and going off.
I'm loving, right. I'm jumping in for a sec. I'm loving that we're
Yeah.
talking about I mean, if no one knows, I'm laughing at the basement was predominantly, I believe, an after hours venue. I'm not quite sure if they
Was.
moved into just where they were just doing nights.
Oh, no.
If I felt like they were just open. Um,
Yeah. Pretty much.
come come on in. The raving's fine. Um,
Yeah.
fuck, I don't know what I was gonna say. I guess when you're talking about the recall here, you played some massive events that I'm aware of in Toronto. I'm not quite sure where else. But you're this story, and I'd love to go back into it. Like, I hope I haven't interrupted your thoughts that they're lost.
No, no, not at all.
But
My thoughts
but
are in now.
you're talking about a venue that I think, I mean, like, as a sardine, with 400 people, felt like it would be 400 people in the basement feels like it'd be fucking packed.
Yeah. Hmm.
So like, so I think that's awesome. Obviously, I mean, so many times when people are recalling something, they'll be like, I was at, giant festival, awesome sauce, and a million one people were there, and everyone had hands in the air. But
Yeah.
here we're talking about, all right, go. I love it. Keep going. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just like, and it I at the end of the day, like I think we owe a great like deal of gratitude to every single person that's ever been to a party. Because honestly, like, you've been, do you remember the Cyrus parties, dude? Do you
Fuck yeah.
remember the Cyrus parties when someone would drop a tune and the crowd would lose their shit and the rewind gets called and the whistles that you hear?
Big moments.
Those moments send chills down your spine, dude. Those are the moments, and there's no music playing. It's just the crowd. When selecta, we were, woo, and then you hear the horns, and there's no music playing, but the energy in that room.
It's this one
Like,
moment where everyone realizes, despite the
and
fact we're all coming from different
right now,
places,
I
we've
can I
got
can
this.
feel the hairs on my neck. Like you get goosebumps. Like
Yeah.
when stuff like that, and it comes with, you know the one thing that I loved about ravers, especially at parties, was their thirst for new music. Especially the drum and bass scene, hands down, were like drum and bass heads were amazing because they didn't. Sure, this song's been out like for 2 weeks and it's good, but you want to make sure that I'm so glad I was never a jungle DJ, drum and bass DJ, because every single week, like you, like, oh, well, that was good last week, but then like you're at a party and four other guys, like you're on at like 2 o'clock, and the guy that was on at 10 played it, the guy who was on at 11 played it, like, you know what I mean, like, and you're shit out of luck if Pat and Chris are playing because you're not going to play anything before they do. So you know what I mean. But it was like just the thirst and the hunger and the appreciation for new beats and new styles and new jams that kept coming out. Like you'd have your staples, your tunes that you'd been playing for like a month that was maybe on your mixtape, and you love that tune, but then you got this new tune, and this tune is the shit, and you can't wait to play it for people, and people can't wait to hear it because it's new. um so I mean, like, the the people that went to parties, those are the real heroes, Josh. Those guys are the unsung heroes, man, because they were the ones that,
I,
like,
I, I love
they
everything you're saying right now.
they
Yeah, I'm with you.
they
I'm with
they
you.
were the ones that pushed you to be better.
For sure.
The
Yeah,
ones like like
it's a
but
puzzle
with
piece. I love it.
it's such a big puzzle piece, such an important puzzle piece.
Well, I've got to
Yeah.
put you in the hot seat right now. Are you ready for it?
Oh, uh, yeah. I kind of got to go pee. Can I run really quickly?
I mean, we're live. You might want to take off your headset.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I mean, I do have a cup here, but I
No,
forgot
no,
I'm not on
that's.
Trader
I mean,
Joe's.
some of
Okay.
the networks we're on would probably not go for
All right.
that. So
Okay. I'll be right
you got
back.
to do what you got to do, Dom.
All right. Thanks, homie.
I don't have interlude music or something to play right now. I should. Here on Utility Room, we always are washroom friendly. Hey, if you're live with us right now, be a good time for y'all to take a bathroom break too.
Thank you, dude. I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, listen, if it happens, it
You
happens.
get your calls and you're 51. Sometimes you have to answer.
You are not.
Yeah, dude. Me and Kenny are the same age. We always just joke about the fact we were born in 1970.
Well, you're both absolutely awesome, handsome gentlemen. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
You ready for the hot seat?
I guess so. Yes.
You've got 3 records. The records that you love, they're ingrained. They're a part of your life. They either used for you when you're DJing to rescue a dance floor in a time of need, or everything's going great. And you're going to use these records because they're fucking certified awesome sauce. What are these 3 records?
Lenny D, Forgotten Moments. Asen, Trip to the Moon Part 2. The third one.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, the funny thing is like I'm so bad with names, and this is a record that I used to play all the time, and I wish I could phone a friend to find out what the name of the record. um, Three records, and those first two came pretty easily,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah, you were on point. I'm like
Like, I was like,
I was about to like be the award for the only utility room guest that was just fucking ready with it, and I was just like, whoa. I'm like, you've been watching the show. You did the homework.
I would say Orbital Belfast.
Ooh, it's hot, fucking lava. Big fan. Snivelization still. That album still is
Yeah.
just for me dynamite, absolute dynamite. If people wanted to get a hold of a Dominik mixtape now.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Could it happen?
Yeah. I believe I should be on Toronto
Toronto
Archive
Rave mixtape.
mixtapes.
TR.
Yep.
Am I saying right? TRMA.
Oh no. I don't know.
Toronto Rave,
Toronto Rave Mixtape Archives. Yeah,
or
yeah.
is it Toronto Mixtape Rave Archive?
I think
I keep messing it up, and I don't want to, obviously,
yeah.
because
I think
huge
I think
respect for
most
them having the archive.
most of my tapes are uploaded onto that.
That's wild. Okay, great. So then, yeah, I mean, it's workout music.
It sure is.
Fuck yeah.
The thing the one thing like I would the I would look at people in the crowd every once in a while in my not so introverted moments, and I just kind of peek out at the crowd. I'd be like, how the hell are you guys dancing to this? Like there were I I mean
Yeah.
I mean honestly, like, because at least I mean you could
Seriously.
you could do it on the half step, kind of like you do like jungle where you just like
Right.
bobbing to every other beat. But there were like I would average at least one person puking and two people passing out every set.
Wow.
And like just like 180 beats per minute. It's like people just going
Yeah,
like
yeah. It
how
was definitely. I
like
mean, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Someone did.
Somebody did.
Absolutely adore having you with us tonight. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like we got into the heart and soul of a DJ tonight.
I think so. We've only
Uh,
scratched the surface though.
there's
Thanks.
more.
There's always more, dude.
We can sequelize Dominik. I think that would be a great idea. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Dom. Don't touch that dial, even though things are going to conclude with us here in the utility room with DJ Dominik. Total
Thank you,
awesome sauce.
everyone.
For all y'all that are streaming with us live, thank you so much. If you're tuning in on the podcast, then you're doing super dope stuff. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, share, and make everything in the room go boom. And we will see you